I'm the Administrative Commissioner for New York, and I'll be chairing the meeting. I'm actually taking over the chair from Dave Simpson of Connecticut, and we thank Dave for his 2 years of service to the board. We're starting a little late, so for all the people who were not at the striped bass meeting yesterday, please indulge the folks that were there. We have very little brain cells left, so we'll try to get through today. First order of business is approval of the agenda. Any changes to the agenda? Seeing none, we'll take that as accepted. And then we have the proceedings from the February 2014 meeting. Are there any changes to the proceedings? Seeing none, we'll list those as accepted. Before every meeting, we take public comment on any issues not on the agenda. I see we've stacked the deck with staff, so, with the audience with staff, so is there any comments from the audience on things not on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move right along. Our next order of business is the TC met with the Delaware Bay Ecosystem TC to discuss, shorebird horseshoe crab survey report summary and arm framework harvest output for 2014. So Penny Howell's going to go through a report on that, and we'll have some action after this. Penny?
Okay, the TC reviewed the horseshoe crab abundance indices from 6 sources of information. I'm just going to summarize a few here and highlight 2 principal reviews. Sources of indices. The first would be the Delaware Bay Horseshoe Crab Spawning Survey. The indices show that there's a fairly steady abundance. The males were increasing slightly, but with no statistical significance, and the females were slightly decreased, but again with no statistical significance. The next source I just want to review is the Delaware Trawl Surveys. There's actually more than one. The first one is the 30-foot trawl catch, summarized over all months, and you can see that the overall population is fairly steady. It's below levels in prior years, but the last few years have been, there's no trend. The other highlight is the 16-foot trawl catch of adults, and again, it's a steady trend, slight increase in the last year, again, lower than prior years, but no trend in recent data. And for juveniles, the picture looks a little better. There's an increase in recent years. We had a little drop in the last few, but 2013 bounced up a bit. So both the horseshoe crab and shorebird TCs agreed that the surveys reflect little change in the status of horseshoe crabs in the Delaware Bay region, and the population has been stable since 2009. Moving on to the red knot status, the horseshoe crab and shorebird TCs reviewed the red knot abundance in the Delaware Bay region and in Tierra del Fuego in Argentina. The abundance in the main wintering areas in Tierra del Fuego has not increased during the study period of 2004 to 2013. Moving closer to home, the abundance of red knots in the Delaware Bay has remained low but relatively stable over the last decade. The proportion of red knots reaching the trigger weight of 180 grams, which is most important for horseshoe crab management, has improved in 4 of the last 5 years in the previous survey. Okay, moving on to the ARM framework procedure for 2015. The ARM framework requires 2 data estimates on an annual basis, horseshoe crab abundance and red knot abundance. Since the framework process started, the Virginia Tech Trawl Survey has provided the estimates for horseshoe crab abundance. However, funding in 2013 was not received, so the Virginia Tech Trawl Survey was not conducted in 2013. In the absence of the abundance estimates from this survey, the ARM working group decided to use the horseshoe crab catch indices from the Northeast Area Monitoring Assessment Program, or NEMAP, to estimate abundance. The Virginia Tech Trawl Survey was designed specifically to obtain an estimate of the horseshoe crab abundance. And while the NEMAP survey is not directed toward horseshoe crabs, that's the first slight problem here. In addition, the surveys were conducted during different times of day and used different gear. So there are several structural reasons why the two data sets may not be compatible. Even though the NEMAP data was harvested, was honed down to match as much as possible the original Virginia Tech survey data set. So the results found that the correlation between the two surveys was not consistent, significant and positive for females, while insignificant and negative for males. And since the fishery harvests only males at this time, this was a critical flaw. The ARM working group presented 4 options for the TC for their consideration. And while both TCs agreed that the annual data sets are the core of the ARM framework, there was too much uncertainty in the accuracy of the NEMAP data to recommend option 2 or option 3, which use the NEMAP abundance estimates to calculate the equivalent Virginia Trawl Survey abundance estimate. So the TC agreed that option 1, or status quo, was the best available option to use for this year's ARM framework and specification setting process in the absence of the Virginia Tech Trawl Survey data. However, the TCs agreed that this option should only be used as a stopgap for 2014 and not extended into the future, and strongly recommends that more reliable estimates of abundance should be investigated for the 2016 analyses. And some suggestions include finding funding for the Virginia Trawl Survey, Virginia Tech Trawl Survey, investigate abundance indices to estimate abundance, or adapt the sampling design of the NEMAP survey to better accommodate the ARM framework data needs, and that last option is highly unlikely. In light of the structural dependence of the ARM framework on the Virginia Tech Trawl Survey data as it was originally developed, the ARM working group has also agreed to investigate adapting the ARM framework methodology to the NEMAP data by reconfiguring the model, and they're going to be looking into that in their next meetings. So, as a result, the ARM framework recommendation is based on the status quo. The selected harvest package 3 allows 500,000 Delaware Bay male horseshoe crabs and 0 female horseshoe crabs in the following quota. I don't have to read that, do I? Okay. The last topic to look into is the artificial bait trials. So far, Connecticut has successfully completed 2 trials. The board directed the TC to conduct field trials in the conch and eel fisheries to quantitatively compare the effectiveness of an artificial bait product developed by LaMonica Fine Foods of Millville, New Jersey, with presently used, to compare it to the presently used horseshoe crab bait in the fishery. And although Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, and New Jersey all volunteered to participate in the trials, only Connecticut has successfully completed the trials to date. 2 trial sets were made in early summer with 1 fisherman. The fisherman carried out his usual fishing methods using the artificial bait, alternating trap by trap with whatever bait product that he usually used. And although these initial trials appear to demonstrate that this alternate bait product is an adequate substitute for whole horseshoe crabs, full analysis of the catch data should not be done until more than 2 trials are completed. And that gets to the point that the major stumbling block with completion of this study was the lack of cooperation by La Monica Foods in delivering the product. After several discussions with ASMFC staff, TC members, and the product company people, highlighting the importance of catering to the needs of volunteer fishermen in order to successfully promote the use of this alternative bait to the conch and eel fishing industry, company officials were completely inflexible as to where, when, and how the product would be made available. For these reasons, the trials were suspended. Massachusetts and Rhode Island withdrew, and until these issues can be resolved, I'm not sure that these trials are going to be able to go forward. That's the end of my report. If there's any questions.
Thanks, Penny. Any questions for Penny? Babalu?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Penny, I want to explore what you just reported on regarding the inflexibility of the company that provides the artificial baits. Why would not a company be, why would there not be an incentive for a company to try to work with the fishermen, given the potential profits that they might make by having their product utilized? I want to try to drill deeper into what's going on there. And if you could add a little bit more to your report on that, thank you.
In my opinion, the company is not ready for prime time. I don't think they realize the position that they're putting us in and the position that the fishermen in, which is unbelievable. I don't understand why they don't, but we've had many discussions. Marin had many discussions with them. The product was supposed to be delivered. We were told and given instructions, which we passed on to the fishermen, that they would be in blocks. They weren't in blocks. The first product that was delivered had been sitting at the dock. They insisted that we go to New Bedford to pick it up, even though they go right past Connecticut and could have just gone off and exit on the highway. We would have met them on the highway if need be, and they refused. They only would deliver it on Mondays and Wednesdays, or 2 days of the week, I don't remember which one it was, and we had to tell them the Friday before. Well, the fisherman wasn't sure when he would be setting gear, so that meant that the product that we got at best was a few days old. And this is a mixture of clams and a few other things, and if you can imagine what old bait smells like, you're there. And this had the consistency of thick oatmeal. So getting it into a bait bag was a little problematic, so the fishermen ended up using more than what was supposed to be this very small amount. That meant that he was concerned about what the price was going to end up being. So it was all kind of going downhill very quickly.
Bill Adler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of things. First of all, did you say that the horseshoe crab levels are stable? That was my first question. Overall.
Yeah, in Delaware Bay. Those reports were just for Delaware Bay.
Oh, okay. And my second thing was, goes to the artificial bait thing. Was there any result from the one trial that was done as to whether it worked?
Yes. As I say, I hesitate to be too quantitative because the sample size is so small. But yes, the bait is viable. It does. The fisherman was satisfied with its performance. He was not satisfied with what he had to go through to get it, but once he got it and used it, it worked.
Dr. Pierce, yeah, Dave.
Just two questions. The first one is with regard to NEMAP. I'm a member of the NEMAP board, and I continue to hope that we'll be in a position to use the results from NEMAP for indices of abundance for a wide variety of species, and we do see some positive information coming out relative to that use. But I note that the technical committee has indicated that the NEMAP information cannot be used at this time, and there's a recommendation that we work with the NEMAP survey to modify equipment and procedures to better sample horseshoe crabs. So my question is, Has there been any communication with the NEMAP team, the researchers involved with NEMAP, to determine if this is a recommendation that actually can be used, that they can be guided by it? Can they really change modify the equipment and procedures to do that?
Yeah, I understand there has been discussion. They offered to make slight modifications, but on the other side of the table, the modeling group also wanted to look into modifying the model procedures as well. Since the model was really formulated around the Virginia Tech trawl data, a lot of this is data imprecision issues. So there's two ways to get at this. One is modifying actually not so much modifying it, I think it's getting more sampling in the areas that need to be done, and a gear change, but not to put it all on NEMAP. The other side of it is the modelers are going to look into the model format and see whether some statistical analyses can be used that are more compatible with the NEMAP procedures.
Okay, thank you. Then finally, in your discussion on the review of the shorebird surveys, I know from the report itself that abundance of red knots in the Delaware Bay has remained low but relatively stable over the last decade, and then the concluding statement is, lacking a rise in abundance, red knots may be listed as threatened in the near future. But the important point made by the technical committee is that a boost in crab productivity is needed to change this trend. So obviously, crabs are important, as we all know. Was any work done by the TC recently or even in the past that would indicate or give us some guidance as to what sort of change in crab productivity is needed to change this trend in red knot abundance that would move us away from the possibility of there actually being a listing of red knot as threatened?
The shorebird technical people have felt that unless we get the spawning abundance back up to what it was in the early 90s, that the birds are still in jeopardy of not making adequate weight. The horseshoe crab TC is not so sure that that's really the limiting factor. That's an open question.
Roy Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Penny, for the report. There's three things in your report, unfortunately, that I find disturbing, and I'd like to list them. One is our inability to fund the Virginia Tech trawl survey. That's already been discussed. The other thing that disturbs me is the apparent lack of cooperation of the artificial bait supplier. Those of us in the Mid-Atlantic region, and especially those of us on the Delaware Bay, placed a great deal of the Department of Natural Resources money into the hands to support the development of artificial bait into the hands of the scientists that were conducting that research. So naturally, we would like to see that investment pay off someday, and we're disappointed that thus far it hasn't translated into suitable field trials. The third thing I find disturbing is the apparent lack of recovery of female horseshoe crabs. Now, none of this is your fault, Penny. Please don't take this personally.
I don't.
But I'm wondering if you would care to offer any speculation, in your opinion, why there's been, in spite of years now of conservation on the parts of the resource agencies, why there's been no apparent recovery of female horseshoe crabs, and even the male horseshoe crabs are not showing perhaps the depth of recovery that we would have liked. Any care to speculate on that in any way? Thank you.
As long as you recognize that it's speculation, my speculation is that this is a slow-growing animal that really is going to take at least 10 years to get one generation of mature females into reproducing. And the fact that we're seeing juveniles coming up, I think, is indication that the conservation efforts are successful. Maybe not successful enough, but the biology of the animal is not going to speed that up too fast. The other part of it is I think that the stock recovers like almost spreading out, so it's not a pinpoint recovery. So you'll see numbers go up slightly and then it'll spread out geographically. So as it builds a slow base, if you will, and then the numbers will grow up from there, because the animals do migrate small amounts, and I think you're going to have to see a recovery of the entire Chesapeake, Delaware, New Jersey substock before you'll see really good numbers coming into the bay. That's my speculation.
Thank you for that. If I could just follow up, Mr. Chairman, very quickly. The other disturbing thing, of course, is the failure of red knots to recover, at least in the Chesapeake Bay area, or in the Delaware Bay area, and it also sounds like the Terra del Fuego population hasn't recovered either. And I don't know, there's a lot of potential reasons for that, let's put it that way, and we've heard them all over the years. Do you personally feel that the failure of the female horseshoe crab population, the failure of the recovery of the female horseshoe crab population, or at least, let's put it this way, perhaps the slow nature of the recovery, do you really think that's continuing to depress the red knot numbers, or do you think there are external factors driving the red knot numbers? Thank you.
Wow. You're really going to push me to the line here. Again, as long as you recognize that it's personal speculation, I think that the linkage between the weight gain and the horseshoe crab egg abundance is real and a limiting factor. And the fact that the weight gain is adequate and increasing is reflective of the conservation efforts and the slow increase in the stock. And that's the slow increase. It's not fast enough, and it's not overriding the other limiting factors that the birds have that I'm not in any position to comment on. So maybe if we flooded the entire Delaware Bay with tons and tons of horseshoe crab eggs, it would override the other limiting factors. Maybe it wouldn't. So that's an experiment that I don't think anybody's going to be able to run. But there is a linkage. They both are stable and increasing in incremental ways. I feel like I'm the president talking about the economy. You know, we're getting there, but very slowly.
Stu.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Penny, that was a great report and an excellent summary, by the way. I was just wondering, has the TC had a chance to look into using some of the other existing surveys and modifying them in place of the Virginia Tech Trawl Survey, like the Delaware Bay Spawning Survey or the New Jersey Clam Survey, or is it just too early yet? You guys haven't gotten to that?
They are going to be looking into that, and I did skim over the fact that the New Jersey surveys, the Ocean Trawl Survey, the Delaware Bay Trawl, Surf Clam Survey was looked at, the Maryland Horseshoe Crab Spawning Survey, the Delaware Bay Horseshoe Crab Egg Survey, and the Delaware Bay and Atlantic Flyway Red Knot. I mean, you know, there's a whole lot more information looking at. I just didn't want to give this long laundry list. So, yeah. The thing is that the framework was built around the Virginia Tech Trawl Survey, and, you know, for better or worse, it went forward that way. Now there is some possibility, and I'm putting a lot of, you know, weight on the working group to come up with a better statistical analysis. After they built this really nice model, now we're asking them to completely change it.
Mike?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks, Penny. I want to follow up on Stu's comment, and
to note that, of course, the loss of the Virginia Tech Trawl Survey is of concern, and it would be nice to have it funded again. But if it comes back in a mode of a year-to-year funding, that's not really a model for a successful effort. We can't live under that uncertainty, I think, year to year. So to follow up on Stu, then, I think we should look to these other surveys. The TC should consider developing some kind of index from these ongoing, more secure surveys and somehow work that into the model. Now, if we can make NEMAP work, so much the better, but I was at that one meeting and it didn't sound very promising to me, at least at that point. But I would encourage the TC to look at these other ongoing surveys and somehow move those or move the modeling effort towards them so they can meet in the middle.
Yeah, just to follow up briefly on that, Mike makes a very good point. The thing that's most important to getting this management model to work is a long-term trend, because of the lengthy nature of the biology and the interaction with that and the birds. So we feel like we're stepping on moving rocks in a river, that which survey is going to be the long-term survey that we can depend on is the question. Good point.
Just a question, maybe, Bob. Yesterday at the exec meeting, there was talked about they're pursuing additional funding. Is that a one-shot deal, or is that something that was longer term?
Well, we'll take whatever we can get, I guess is the short answer. But yeah, we've been up on the Hill having discussions about this over the last month or so, and there's a few congressional offices on the House side and the Senate side from New Jersey and Delaware that are interested in finding some money for this project. So we're going to keep working with them. We're on a continuing resolution, and we're kind of all in a holding pattern, but we're going to keep working on it, and hopefully we'll be able to come up with some money. But, again, it's definitely not a guaranteed long-term source, but it's one of those things, if you can get it woven into the federal budget enough times, then people get used to it, and it kind of becomes a long-term funding. So we're trying to get that going. We've had some pretty successful meetings, and there's a lot of interest and a few letters flying around or being drafted right now anyway. So we're going to keep pushing, but it's not guaranteed long term.
Bill Adler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Other factors in the red knot, I don't know what they amount to, but I have heard over the years that there are other factors that can be limiting the growth of the red knot stock, and it might not just be the horseshoe crab. Do they eat other things other than horseshoe crab eggs, was one of my questions. Do they know whether they have another food source besides horseshoe crab eggs?
Yes, there's other food out, but the key here is with this long-term migratory bird, by the time it gets up to Delaware, it's almost physiologically exhausted, and many of these birds actually digest part of their organs in order to keep flying. So they could eat other foods, but other foods are much more difficult to digest. Such as small clams or even worms and stuff. So they really need the equivalent of white bread to eat. And eggs are the ideal food for them, very high energy, very easy to digest. So there are other food options, but this one really nutritionally is far superior given their deteriorated state when they actually finally make it from Argentina all the way up. And you can understand that a small bird that migrates from Argentina to the Arctic Circle is exposed to all kinds of other mortality factors.
If I may, can we develop an artificial food for the red knots? Maybe we could call Monica or whatever it is food. I didn't know, Mr. Chairman, if you needed a motion to accept this report or not.
Not yet, Bill. I think we're going to go through a presentation on that, and then we'll get into that. First, I got Lance Stewart.
Yeah, hi, Penny. One of the things I was wondering if has been followed up in the trawl survey is nocturnal studies. I suggested about 2 or 3 years ago that if the Virginia Trawl Survey were going to have any real relevance, I think what I've seen in many years of studying lobster at night with scuba gear is that horseshoe crabs come out of the sediment at night. So you could have orders of abundance greater in your trawl surveys if they had tried that. So since the amount of leverage that trawl survey has on the condition of red knot and everything else, I would think that would have been a variable that would have been tried to be corrected.
I can't even answer that question. I don't even know what I'm sorry, Lance, I don't understand the question you're asking.
If Virginia Trawl Survey had been directed at conducting nocturnal trawl surveys, I would suggest, and I don't know because it hadn't been done, that their abundance indices per trawl would be extremely higher than during a day survey.
I don't.
So, you know, I don't know if you corrected for that or anything. Say that's.
Oh. Yeah, they did do, the working group did do a correction for the day-night. That's the whole process they went through to try to make the NEMAP data match by doing corrections for just what you're discussing.
I've never seen that, I just wondered.
Is there, did they do a whole technical report of the, no, yeah. We had a report that just summarized the end result. They didn't make a report of all the internal steps that they made.
So in summary, did it make any difference at all, or was it just?
Oh, no, it did, and they adjusted it, but even with the adjustment, the indices didn't, they were looking for trends, not actual numbers. They were trying to get a trend match. You're right, the NEMAP numbers were lower than the Virginia Tech, which would be understandable, but they were looking to get a trend match, and it matched for the females, but it did not match for the males. And reasons for that are varied.
Okay, well, fine.
Babalu.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Penny, it seems clear the board shares your frustration regarding the problems with the artificial bait trials. Do you have a recommendation as to what might be done or what could be done to get that back on track?
Wow. The product has to be made available, at least for a trial basis. They've got to be able to deliver it to us somewhere close, like within the state, especially when they're going right by. Their insistence that it only be delivered to New Bedford was a real impediment. The other thing is they've got to work out the consistency of the product. They said that it couldn't be frozen. Our fishermen froze it and said it worked fine. It's unfortunate that it has to be frozen because that was one of going to be the things that would bring the price down if they could buy it in large quantities and not have to freeze it, because running a freezer is expensive. But if that's the case, they ought to have told us that that's how it needed to be handled. So they need to get the product, be more honest about how we're supposed to handle this stuff rather than telling us that it's in a nice neat block and then giving us stuff that you have to scoop out with an ice scoop, and making it available in more locations and more readily when we can use it and get it to the fishermen.
And so I guess, and I wasn't aware, frankly, that there had been some funding perhaps provided to help get this going. So now that I'm aware of that connection, is this something that the board might want to consider writing a letter? I mean, is there something we can do other than just looking to you to try to do your best? And I understand you are.
Yeah.
I just think I speak for the board in saying that we would be more than willing to try and do whatever we can to back you in your efforts to try to get this company to do what apparently they really need to do and should be doing, particularly given the funding that's been provided. Thank you.
I'd appreciate that help, yes.
Tony.
Just to give a little further detail, Marin and I did have several conversations, Marin more than myself, but with the gentleman that owns the company, and to try to sort of help foster this partnership that we were going through with them. We did pay for the bait itself. We were not paying for delivery, I believe, or else it was a added cost into the slabs of bait that we were paying for. They were delivering other products up to New Bedford, and so that is why it was every Monday and Wednesday, or every Monday and Thursday, because that's when they made their regular deliveries. We can try to have some more conversations. I'm not sure a letter is going to be have that much influence over the company itself, and I don't know if the conversations will help. Marin's probably had at least 5 conversations with this gentleman about deliveries and product quality, et cetera. So.
I also think one of the largest issues is communication, so I'm not sure how successful a letter would be.
We could send some guys from Brooklyn up to explain it to them. Dave Borden.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I arrived a little late this morning, so if I ask a question that's already been handled, just move me along.
Well, you get the last question, because I think we need to move on after this.
Yeah, I'm just curious about this issue about freezing the product, because at least in New England, I can't speak on behalf of the Chesapeake states, but in New England, every single conch dealer that I know of has freezer facilities. They freeze their horseshoe crabs, they have frozen crabs, they have frozen mussels that they're all selling to the conch fishermen. So if the product were frozen, it would be a just absolutely natural addition. They just put it in the freezer, and when the fishermen come in, they dole it out, and if it is frozen, they could keep it in coolers for days. So it's like there's a disconnect here somewhere. Thank you.
Yeah, that's probably the way it's going to happen. We were just hoping that this product would, because there is a cost, that the cost would be offset by not having to freeze it. But it looks like you're right, that it's going to have to be frozen just like every other bait product. But that wasn't what the company purported, told us ahead of time. So that had to be added. In fact, they were given instructions not to freeze it because it wouldn't work, and that's not true. It does work. It does work fine frozen. So there's a little disconnect here.
Just, Jim, one further. Is the formula private property, or is this a formula that the commission has come up with?
There was a study at the University of Delaware, and there's actually a paper, and the recipe for it is in the paper, but some of the ingredients are difficult to obtain.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think we're going to move on now to setting the 2015 Delaware Bay specs, so I'm going to get that going. Marin's going to do a PowerPoint first, and we'll get into it. Marin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this will be very brief. As Penny mentioned, the ARM framework is what we use to set the specifications. Usually we use the Virginia Tech Trawl Survey data as the Horseshoe Crab Abundance Index. We did not have that data this year, so that was a hurdle. And we also use the shorebird abundance that Penny went over. And since we don't have that benthic trawl survey data, the ARM working group and the TC recommend status quo for the 2015 fishery. So that is ARM harvest package number 3, 500,000 male horseshoe crabs in the Delaware Bay region. And this is the horseshoe crab quota by each state in that region. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Marin. Bob's proud of you. You got there quick. We're catching up on time here. Any questions for Marin? Okay, I'm going to need a motion to move this forward. Bill Adler?
A motion for what? I mean, you need a motion to accept all these reports?
To set the specifications to the site, essentially the recommendations of the TC.
Okay, I so move that we accept the report and the specifications.
Second.
Stu, you got it. Stu Mickles is second the motion. Bill, could we specify that it's harvest package 3 under that? So
yes, add that in.
All right. We'll let Kirby catch up here. While he's getting that up there, is any discussion on the motion? Does that look good, Bill? Okay, no discussion on the motion. Is there any objection to the Sorry, Joe. I know. Motion to accept the report and the specification of Harvest Package 3 for the Delaware region for 2015. It's a motion by Bill Adler and seconded by Stu Mickles. Is there any objection to the motion? Seeing none, we'll accept that as unanimously approved. Is that good enough, Joe? Thanks. Okay, moving on, Marin's going to go over next agenda item. We have our FMP review and state compliance. Marin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This will also be very brief. So this is the total harvest for horseshoe crabs, biomedical, and the bait industry. I'm going to break it down a little bit for you. For the bait fishery, there was a total harvest of 796,939 crabs, which is an increase of 18% from 2012. However, the harvest is still well below the coast-wide quota, which is 1.4 million crabs. In terms of the biomedical harvest, the number of crabs that were brought to biomedical facilities was 549,937 crabs. This is a 3% decrease from the previous 5-year average. And there was a total of 60,622 crabs that were used in the bait industry and bled that was transferred from the biomedical industry to the bait industry. And that's actually a 33% decrease from the past 5-year average. The coast-wide mortality estimate was 78,007 crabs. In terms of state compliance, all states submitted reports, and the PRT found that all state management measures were consistent with the FMP. The District of Columbia did not submit a report. As in years past, the PRT recommends that the District of Columbia, as well as the Potomac River Fisheries Commission, take steps to be removed from this board. In addition, the PRT strongly recommends the continuation of the benthic trawl survey, and I think the board agrees with that, so we'll continue working on that. And finally, there were 5 jurisdictions that requested de minimis: New Hampshire, Potomac River Fisheries Commission, South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida all qualified and requested it. New Hampshire has been removed from the board. New Jersey qualified but did not request it, and the PRT recommends granting all requests for de minimis. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Marin. Any questions for Marin? Bill Adler.
If the Potomac River fisheries in D.C. are de minimis, do they still have to put in that report that they didn't put in?
Potomac River Fisheries Commission submitted their report, and they do have to submit one, but D.C. has not submitted one for at least 2 years.
And if they are de minimis, do they have to put that report in?
Yes, they do.
Oh, you, okay.
Other questions for Marin? Robert Boyles.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is it an action by this board, or is it an action by the commission to remove DC and PRFC?
I believe DC has to come to us, the commission, rather, and ask to be removed.
I guess it's untoward to say anything about Washington ignoring the needs and the wants of the states. I guess that's out of line and out of order, right?
Babalu.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Marin, it's nice to see a report that doesn't have any holes in it due to confidentiality issues. Is that because, with regard to the biomedical figures that you put up, there's at least 3 or more companies? Is that why we're able to see the full report? Thank you.
That's correct. There are 4 or 5 biomedical companies along the coast, so we can smush them all together.
Smidge. A smushy smidge. Any more questions for Marin? Okay, I'm going to need a motion to accept the compliance reports. Oh, Go ahead, Robert.
Just a technical question, maybe Marin. So DC is required to submit a compliance report, but has not.
That is correct, and this is now the third year in a row where they have not, and have not responded to any inquiries as to submitting a report.
Mr. Chairman, I think that warrants some action by this board. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would, Robert. If essentially we're into third year on this, is that maybe I mean, I'm not sure of the procedure on this. Normally, they would request to be removed from the board, but I guess we could put a motion up to remove them if the board sees fit. Tom?
Yeah, in regards to this issue, Maureen, you said that they haven't been responsive to inquiries. Has that been a letter or has there been a phone call? I mean, they were here this week. I was wondering if the issue was brought up to them personally. I would think that they would be responsive, but maybe I'm wrong.
It was not brought up this week. I have called and emailed, but with no response.
Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, I would recommend maybe another follow-up call, and if they don't respond, then we'll consider taking some action.
I also believe when we, about a year ago, when all the states declared interest in these boards, they were non-responsive in terms of horseshoe crabs as well.
Tony, would a letter be more appropriate on this, because obviously they've been talked to and a phone call is probably going to have the same result. Maybe we do something in writing might be more beneficial.
We can send a letter and an email with that letter, same exact letter, and see what we can do.
Does that sound good for everybody on the board? Okay. Go ahead, Craig.
If I could suggest that maybe someone as high up in our food chain as possible could make a phone call rather than sending a letter, I think that might be a better step. It's amazing what happens when somebody gets the wrong letter.
Who do you suggest in the food chain?
Maybe a director or maybe the head of our council. You know, somebody. It may just not be getting somebody's attention. But if somebody gets a letter from this group, it may not be the kind of attention that we want. I guess that's my point. So.
Got any ideas, Tony?
Why don't Bob or I give Brian a call first, see if we can work it out, and if not, then we may ask for assistance from Tom, since I know Tom does talk to Brian on a fairly regular basis, so we know we might get a response back from there. How about we try that?
That sounds like a great plan. You okay with that, Tom? Okay, that sounds like a good approach. Oh, Bob, you got an assignment. You left the room. Don't do that anymore. Okay. All right, so I'm back to we need a motion to accept the compliance reports and the de minimis. Bill Adler?
I'll make a motion to accept the compliance report and the FMP review.
And the request for the de minimis for the states up on the board?
I'll add that the de minimis states of New Hampshire and Potomac River Fisheries Commission and DC. Oh no, just okay, and the yeah. Okay.
Okay. Kirby's putting up. Is that a second, David? No. I need a second. Dave Simpson. Is there a discussion on the motion? David Pierce.
Yeah, just a clarification, Mr. Chairman, regarding de minimis. Maybe there's a sequence I'm not quite appreciating here, but under the management plan review, there's an action item, and it indicates that Massachusetts and New York have also requested de minimis. So should this be modified to include New York and Massachusetts, or is that the subject of another motion?
That actually was the subject of a typo. When I saw that, I thought that was a test to see if I was actually reading the material. So I don't think I'm going for de minimis. I don't know if Massachusetts is interested in de minimis, but I think those were just typos in the original agenda.
Well, I must admit, I'm sitting in for my colleague, Dan McKiernan, and I didn't think we were requesting de minimis, so when I see Massachusetts here in the list, it's a bit confusing, to say the least. I'm going to assume that we're not requesting de minimis, and that this is also a mistake. We've been lumped in with our friends from New York. Unless someone in the room from Massachusetts knows differently, I'm not going to make a motion to include Massachusetts.
Rest assured, David, I looked at it, and Massachusetts and New York do not meet the requirements for de minimis, so. Any other discussion on the motion? Is there any objection to, oh, sorry, Joe. Move to accept the compliance reports, the FMP review, and de minimis status for the states of New Hampshire, the PRFC, South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida. Motion by Mr. Adler and a seconded by Mr. Simpson. Is there any objection to the motion? Seeing none, the motion is approved by unanimous consent. Now we can move on to, I believe, our last order of business, which is we have to elect a vice chair. Since I just took over, we don't have a vice chair. We need to get one. There's some fabulous perks with this job, incredible travel, see all great places in the East Coast of the U.S., and a great species. So are there any nominations for vice chair? Mr. Woodward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to nominate Dr. Malcolm Rhodes from South Carolina as vice chair.
Wonderful. Is there a second to that motion? Russ Allen. Now, this is where we need Pat Augustine because Robert Boyles.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that we close the floor to nominations and that Dr. Rhodes be appointed as vice chair by acclamation.
I think everyone agrees with that. Thank you, Mr. Boyles. And congratulations, Dr. Rhodes. Welcome to the team. Is there any more business to come before the Horseshoe Crab Board? Seeing none, a motion to adjourn? So moved. Thank you, everyone. Bob?
We're going to do the social economic workshop still at 9:45, so everybody can go get checked out, get organized, and we'll start that one as scheduled.